some battles need to be fought and lost in order to win the war. Mm-hmm. And can I say something a bit edgy here?
Please do.
Many politicians don't have a life to go back to. So that's the quiet part out loud. I would like to hear why a right-wing extremist thinks the way they think. Mm-hmm. I want to hear why a left-wing extremist wants to think the way they think. Because if we don't speak to each other, we don't see the humanity in the other person. I could say if there's one word that concerns me, encapsulates all my concern, the word is division. Because I believe that when people are divided, they can easily be conquered. If we're told we can't speak to each other or we can't speak in a certain way, then that person's the enemy. Now we can't even see the humanity in the other person. The important words here are that it says firearms ownership is a privilege and not a right. Privileges can be removed very easily, whereas a right is innate. It's there, you have it. There's no arguing about it.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Lance.
Thanks, Dev.
Thank you for coming in today.
I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
I think this is our round 2.
Round 2, yep. The last time was I was being dismissed. The formality was that I'd been dismissed, but it was going to be effective as of midnight or the close of business or whatever that day. So yeah.
It was on the day.
The day.
The day. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting timing.
And you have covered a fair ground from there.
I have, yeah.
So I think it's good to people who are watching this as the first one to give a bit of a story or backstory of yours.
Okay. I'll try and just hit the main points. Former police officer of 27 years. Mm-hmm. Joined at the age of 19. Graduated at the age of 20. I'm now 48. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I got sacked. I got dismissed. When was it? Was it 2020?
I think
2024. As a result of disobeying the Commissioner's order to be vaccinated, which we can get into separately if you want. There's a number of reasons there. Apart from being a police officer, I'm a licensed gunsmith. Mm-hmm. I've got a small business doing that. I've had that for 20 years, so that did run concurrently with the policing for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's expanded over the last few years, and now that's what I do, is gunsmithing and also fitting and turning or machining, engineering, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm at in terms of employment. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I've got a wife and 2 kids, one adult and one late teen daughter. Mm-hmm. And I have been involved in and interested in politics since the COVID thing happened. Mm-hmm. And I suppose I'm interested and I'm drawn to it because it's the same feature that is within my personality, that developed within my personality as a police officer. It's like I see something that's wrong and I go, what's going on here? And I want to look and investigate and figure it out and try and fix it if I can, if there's something that needs to be fixed. And I really think there's something that needs to be fixed in Australia, worldwide actually.
And growing up as a young man, what was the first thought to join the police force? What do you think has happened across your growing age which made you lean towards police service?
One of the biggest, this is going to sound very uninteresting, but one of the biggest factors drawing me to it initially was the pay. Mm-hmm. For the skills that I had, I didn't I didn't do any masters or bachelors or any sort of formal qualification. Mm-hmm. But I was drawn to it because it was a respectable job. Mm-hmm. It had the skills within it that I could do. Mm-hmm. I did martial arts for many years, so I wasn't really worried about my personal safety hand to hand. Every young man's interested in the excitement of certain careers like military, being an astronaut, all those things you want when you're a little kid. Maybe you want to be a sportsman or whatever. But there's that excitement factor when you're a teenager. Mm-hmm. And that's initially what drew me to it. I suppose it was a respectful job and it paid well enough. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that I didn't always think. When I first joined, I thought that I would join, develop it into an adult, and then go out on my own with business. But that never happened. I stayed in for 27 years.
How has your understanding of the word policing and then police force, these two terms, had evolved just before you joined in, and then initial induction, and then the honeymoon period of, yes, I'm here to serve, and then across the service of 3 decades?
That's a really good question. How do you come up with those? Okay, so the first part, I'll pull apart the first part. So policing and police force, that we could talk about that for quite a while, but I do see a distinction. And now for my own mental health, sometimes I have to think of policing as law enforcement now, because I think it's so far removed from what Sir Robert Peel intended when he formulated and guided the English population and the Parliament and the royalty at the time into creating a police force. It's broadly Sir Robert Peel's concept of policing was the people are the police and the police are the people. He would often say that, and I believe that something he would accompany that statement with in public was police officers are simply paid full time to do what a member of the public ought to do. So there's this responsibility level, and this responsibility was seen not just on the police who are being paid, it was also on the public to uphold and guide the community in a common direction, which obviously you need a cohesive society in order to have that common direction, which is a totally separate issue. But policing, and then we've got a police force. Nobody's going to bat an eyelid at the fact that sometimes you need to use force when you're in a position of authority, and there are appropriate times for that. However, something that they're called the Peelian principles. So if you just Google it, you'll get the 9 Peelian principles. And one of them is that it must be recognised that support from the public is inversely proportional to the amount of force that is used. So the more force you use as a police force, that you inversely get support from the public.
Social license.
I guess. Yeah. I see in my head, I see it actually as a graph. So more force you use, less compliance. And that's what's happening. I see it everywhere. The firearms community, saw it during COVID. I'm meeting just nice old people in my town. I live in a country town. They just don't like police anymore. They'll say it. I'm scared of police. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to look at them. I don't want to go to the police station. And so that upsets me greatly, because I still feel like a cop, which is weird, because I've been out for ages and I was treated like a leper or something. I don't know how I was treated, but it was
social pariah.
Yeah, I guess. So there's the policing and police force. So and I quite liked when I think it was one of the commissioners came on board and he announced, I think it was Dawson, believe it or not, so we are a police force and we are returning to those. And at the time that got a lot of support within the department, because people were sick of the woke direction that we were heading in the mid 2010, 20-teens. And however, I'm not sure that particular commissioner's actions matched his words. In all arenas anyway. And so that's the force. Now you asked another part of that question was...
And how's the meaning of these words has evolved across the decades of service?
From the time when I joined, it's actually really interesting. People always say, things were better in the old days. Like, okay, have you changed? Or has there actually been a change in what's happened, or have I changed as a person? And I think it's a bit of both. So I've learned and I've looked at things and then when I look back, I see things as different than they are now, and you feel a sense of loss almost. So it's important to try and remain somewhat then you can't be impartial to it because you're part of it. But you have to remain a little bit objective. So I'll give you some observations. In 2005, the Emergency Management Act came out. I'd been in the job almost 10 years, and I was working up north in a small country town. And I remember the trainers I think they were trainers, instructors from the academy or wherever they were from, coming out and doing the introduction. This is this new act. And they did it as well with the Criminal Investigation Act. And I remember thinking when we were doing the training that this thing was being sold to us, oh, this is great, we've got all these powers. There's all these new powers. And I'm thinking, emergencies, a lot of them that the police have, they haven't really changed in nature. You've got all the natural disasters like cyclones and fires and all that sort of stuff. You've got man-made problems. The emergency side, there's a person doing something bad and illegal and people are going to get hurt, so we've got to deal with it. There's a traffic crash. There's got all these, they haven't changed. So we've got these new laws and we've been told there's these great new powers to deal with it. I'm thinking, well, what to do what? And I remember one of the examples that was given to us in training was you've got a road closure, or you've got this because there's a cyclone or there's a fire or there's a flood, and you've got this power to arrest. And the training covered this. If you arrest that person because they're going into that area, you can no longer help anybody else because now you're tied up with a prisoner. So that's logical. Which begs the question, like, okay, you've got to have some powers, but why is there this big hoo-ha about having new powers all the time? The most sane person, if a police officer is standing at a roadblock and says, look, there's a fire just over that hill and it's not safe to go there and, you know, we've shut the road, most sane people go, oh, okay, I won't go there. The exception is their house is in that area. So that creates a whole conundrum of issues. It's an observation that I had, and I remember thinking at the time, what's this big thing about all these powers that we need? And then a friend of mine pointed out to me when the 2016 Public Health Act was brought in, the powers within that, which are quite disturbing. If anybody wants to look, you want to look at Section 158 of the Western Australian Public Health Act, which gives authorised officers in times of emergency the power to forcibly enter a premises, to forcibly restrain people, to strip them naked down to their underwear, and to allow the administration of any medicine, which includes a vaccine, but any medicine. And it was funny, when my friend pointed out to me, I'm like, they'll never use that. And looking back, I examined my own thoughts about that. You think, well, why have a power that you're never going to use? It's the same as that Emergency Management Act. Why have you got a power that runs against what you're trying to achieve?
When were they doing that act, what do you think, in our observation, that what was the scenario they were thinking of in their head? Because if you were putting a power, there is a scenario or there's a situation, hypothetical situation they're thinking of. Yes.
So, well, I actually know a man that spoke to a member of Parliament who was there at the time in the Liberal Party, which the Liberal Party was in power when that act was passed. Well, their explanation was they were given this horrible picture of Ebola, people bleeding from the eyeballs. We need to do this thing. Now, I would imagine if I hadn't heard that from that sitting member, or I heard that second-hand information from a sitting member, that's what I would imagine the story would be painted to legislators. So people in Parliament would have been told, there's this thing that we need. We need to do this because here's some evidence. And I understand that fear-based reaction because humans act a lot from fear. And it went through. However, the observations of that sitting member were, what was strange about that particular bill is that it arrived on a silver platter. It wasn't developed by the normal process through the parliamentary committee. I don't know what they're called. There's some lawyers that draft legislation. And it just arrived ready-made. And what's interesting is that same legislation, in a very similar way, was brought in between 2015 and 2016 in every single state of Australia. So there's a national coordinated approach to have this, which is not unreasonable because emergency coordinators across all states need to coordinate. So it's not unreasonable. I do find it a little bit odd, though, that the powers there that are the same, and it's the same thing when questions are asked of legislators, why do you have this extreme power here? Oh, we'll never use it, don't worry about it. Now, that's what alarms me. It's like, well, why have a power that you're never going to use? Because COVID, 2021, 5 years later, they're using the powers. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact they were considering using those powers. The level of fear that was in the community, not just within the police, but in the wider community that, people I was talking to. I was fairly lucky. I was in a situation where I was a district resource, so I was being sent from the wheat belt to Perth regularly. Mm-hmm. I was watching the borders. I was watching who was crossing. I was watching how many vehicles were around. I was watching the hospitals. I would deliberately drive by hospitals and look at the queues or the lack thereof. And I didn't see a line-up with what we were being told and reality. Mm-hmm. So I think I hope that answers that question in a way, is that how things have changed over the years. Mm-hmm. I think there has been an elevation of Parliament and parliamentary power, mm-hmm. and there's been a centralisation of power, unofficial centralisation of power between the executive and the Parliament. And I believe many sitting members, parliamentarians, too heavily rely on executive people for information and advice. We've seen that with the Firearms Act. It's my opinion that the Parliament have relied too heavily on the police to formulate the legislation, and that's very dangerous in my opinion. Because if you ask a police officer, you just naturally think about it. Say you've got an area around here. There's an excess of burglaries between 1 a.m. and 3 p.m. because these things happen from time to time. If you ask a police officer, look, don't worry about the laws. You've got the ability to make up rules. How are we going to stop these burglaries? Standard cop's going to go, curfew between 1 and 3, straight up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so 1 and 3 a.m. is not much of a problem. So we start a curfew. That will remove vehicles and people from the roads. So you'll have a decline in burglaries. But what will happen then is the criminals will work around them. And then all of a sudden that 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. will become 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., mm-hmm. right? So they'll need to expand it. And you keep expanding it. And you keep expanding it until the point that it starts encroaching on people's freedoms. Mm-hmm. Now, the 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. was a problem and would be a problem for me because I'm looking at things into the future as well. It's exactly what happened during COVID. I saw the way these things were rolling, the way that the Commissioner was talking. They're going to bring this in, they're going to bring that in. And you extrapolate it out into the future. You're like, this is not going well. You look at the legislation that they're relying on or that they may rely on. I got cold goosebumps one day at work when I was reading Section 158. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that scared the hell out of me because it just started the beginning of COVID and I read the legislation. And part of my job as a trainer in the police, because I was a trainer towards the tail end of my career, was to give people a refresher on legislation before we'd start a training exercise. All right, what do we got? What are our powers for this situation? What do we do? How do you do this? How do you do that? And I started to imagine what it would be like to be a police officer and be utilised to forcibly enter people's houses, hold them down, strip their clothes off them. God knows why you need to do that, but whatever. And then have a doctor or a nurse come and vaccinate them forcibly. And then their kids. That I honestly get shivers thinking about it. Anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was concerned about during COVID. Mm-hmm. Now, being a firearms owner from the age of before I joined the police, I was always watching government around the messaging and the way that the powers and the developments over time with the firearms, the regulation of firearms was occurring. The former police minister, Mr. Papalia, and not so much the current police minister, he hasn't really said much on the firearms publicly, But the messaging that these types of people gave for this, the excuse for this new legislation was, it hasn't been changed in 50 years, it's outdated, we need to do this. That's just untrue. It's been constantly updated. Police were constantly changing the goalposts with how you have to store things, how you do this, how you do that, especially in my area where I'm a licensed firearms repairer and manufacturer. There's always been development.
I think from a relationship between the state, as in the government, and the individual. So the government and the individual, the relationship is in terms of where does the line of the freedoms sit, and then who control what.
Yeah.
Because the power is given by the individual to the government.
Yes.
And is power in some situations taken by the government from the individual.
Yes.
So how do you see the fine balance of that seesaw of the power in the middle?
Yeah.
Who takes what on such certain situations? How do you see that freedoms playing? And take an example of firearms if you want to.
Okay. I'll draw on the firearms for an example if I need to, but I'll speak more broadly because I think it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's happening across all areas.
Mm-hmm.
The hubris of people in government and in power, whether it's the executive or the legislature, to an extent the judiciary, but I'm not really that involved in the judiciary. They seem to be coming from a position that they have this power and people just have to suck it up because they don't know what's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a mentality of people that are in power that they're making decisions, mature adult decisions,
mm-hmm.
and they're doing what's best for people and people don't know what's good for them. Whereas I tend to think that the average adult does know what's good for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think John Smith knows to do with John Smith's money best. And this suggestion that we need all our decisions made for us on our behalf
mm-hmm.
by people in power it's so nonsensical that when you say it out loud, you go, yeah, of course. But if you look at the actions of people in power, that's exactly how they're acting. And I could give a firearms example, but I don't need to. It's that everybody knows it now. If they don't, they're not watching what's happening in social media. And if the wider media has covered firearms. The relationship between the governed and the governors, and I don't mean the official titles of governors, but the people in positions of power. It is really interesting. I feel like the further up they go the chain or the the hierarchy, the less attached they become with their people. And they rely really heavily on all these in-between methods, staff officers, advisors, lobbyists, whatever, polling companies. And I get that they're probably stretched thin for time. So they can't be engaging with the public all the time because they're busy doing whatever they're doing. However, they probably need to start connecting with the public more and probably start connecting with people that don't agree with them, which is difficult because we kind of want to hear our own thoughts echoed back at us. We like living in echo chambers sometimes, myself included. And I'm just not sure that connection is made. There's this like distancing. But there's also something happening at the other end of it. You mentioned the people. Because that's where the power comes from. The people vote. They allow people in power to come in and they have to vote them in. There's a relationship there that people are disconnected. How many people are a member of a political party? And that worries me because the answer's not many.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are politically active or doing something that affects the political life? Most people are concerned with what iPad they're going to buy next, which is strange because they're always complaining about the political. So they're complaining about these things. And some may not be complaining, but you speak to them and they're worried. They're worried about the kid's future. The kid can't buy a house. They can't get a house. There's a shortage of housing and, just so on and so forth right through society. And the question I always come up with is, well, what are you doing about it? What are the things you actively can do? And many people say, well, I'm just one person. Well, there's 20-something million people in Australia.
25, yeah.
So, okay, 25. So I'm just one person, said 25 million people. So if you want to make a difference or you want things to change, you're going to have to get involved, and we don't want to. I would prefer, now that my police thing is over, I would prefer to go to my little workshop up at Northern there and just make stuff out of metal, fix guns, do whatever I've got to do and do my thing, but I have to do this. It's the same sense, the same duty of care that I felt as a police officer is now what makes me get involved politically, which is why I ran as a candidate in the 2025 election.
Before we go there in the candidate, what's in a functioning or an engaged civil democracy,
Yep.
What do you think are key roles / responsibilities of a citizen, and what's the burden of citizenship?
Yes, that's an excellent question. There's that old saying, with great power comes great responsibility. What was that, Spider-Man? That is true. And it's not so much power, it's the freedom as well. I think, I can't remember the person that spoke these words, but the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And you must remain vigilant. And vigilant doesn't just mean you watch and you look. That's what people think vigilance means. It's you watch and are ready to act, and then act when necessary. So you want freedoms. Freedoms. Okay, what? Freedom of what? Movement? Freedom to move around? Freedom to make decisions about your own body? Freedom to decide what you do with your money? Freedom about what property and types of property that you own? They're all freedoms. But all freedoms can be, or rights, if you want to call them rights, they can all be curtailed. And what I mean curtailed, they can be cut short, limited, restricted. And the structure of our nation is such that Parliament can make laws that curtail people's rights, because it does. It happens all the time. I'm quite happy being limited to 110 kilometres an hour on a country road. I'm starting to get annoyed with the drop in speed. It's some of the speed limits in some of the areas, some, not many, only some, appear to be a performance, a statement by those in power to say, look how much we care, we're going to drop the speed limit here. I question the evidence that would support some of those speed limits. And there's only some I'm talking about. But it's starting to annoy people and it's restricting people. And I question whether it's going to save any lives. I think driver skill, inattention, people using devices while they're driving, is probably more of a fatigue. It's a massive issue, the reason why they're having crashes. That was just an example of a curtailment. It's a very small one. You want to get to a big one that I've got knowledge in, it'd be firearms. So I'm not a criminal. I don't go around breaking the law. I'm not a member of criminal organisations. Why is my right to own property, being a firearm, now being curtailed beyond what's reasonable? Well, they'll tie it in. They'll say that it's needed for public safety. And this is where we get caught in a loop. This constant message of safety browbeats the average citizen into backing down and going, oh, okay, yeah, well, I don't want to hurt anyone. Yeah, I want people to be safe. So, yeah, I'll just shut up and say nothing. And we've been getting browbeaten, I feel, for the last 20 plus years with this stupid message of safety. And don't get me wrong, I like safety. It's just you have to be reasonable about things. And you must approach things with a a good argument for the reason why you're going to curtail a right or a freedom. Because if we had unlimited freedoms and unlimited rights, you just have anarchy. Because there would be no structure. There must be something in between. And I think that's where I would disagree with people that would support the laws that Mr. Papalia spoke so highly of, the firearms laws, and other laws, if you want to include that. So that's the curtailment, that argument, and what the duty of the citizen is. That's what the question you asked. Sorry, it's long-winded, isn't it, Dev? The responsibility for the citizen is to stand up when it's right to say it and not be afraid. And that's what I see. We've been browbeaten by this message of safety so that we feel like we're going to say the wrong thing, or we feel like we're going to be made out to be some sort of in my case, a gun-toting redneck. So, well, we don't have the American structure of law, for example, which don't have that. So it's a stupid argument. But the Labor Party made that argument about anyone that supported gun ownership. Oh, you want a US or American-style gun laws? Idiot. Stupid. But this is the level of argument that we accept as people from members in Parliament. The answer is go and join a political party, and don't just join, get in and make a difference. Elbow your way around. If you see there's people in there that have got their head shoved where it shouldn't be shoved and they can't see the light of day, maybe they need to be encouraged to go somewhere else and then take their place. And
is the majority, one of the roles of citizen is to probably question the information being shared through multiple sources, because every individual is part of different groups or subgroups.
Yes.
And these subgroups could be, their own community setting, community group, associations, charities, and not-for-profits, whatever groups they are part of, associations.
100%.
And if these associations are recipient of some government funding, which means they become a method of communication for government funding to that group of audience.
Right.
And probably a role of a citizen to ask questions, to rationally ask questions on the facts and information being shared, not to take it at face value.
Yeah. Well, I feel that most people now, a lot of people, and I'm trying to stretch my horizons a bit and see beyond my horizons with the people that I speak to and listen to what it is that they're interpreting. And I think most of them are in that space now. They're questioning everything. They're going, we're being told it's this, but is it really? Like I'm just not satisfied. And I feel like all the major parties are losing traction because they're not genuinely engaging with people. And all you're getting is these talking heads. You get the old, the picture I have in my mind is one of those little bobbling heads on somebody's dash, those little toys. These people that are entertaining when they speak, that they've got a method of communication that makes you look, and the hand gestures and the right things and the right tone. It's like, well, what's the substance of your message? And it's all style and no substance. And for example, my two teenage girls, one's 19 and one's 17. They can tell the difference between AI and a real video. That gap is getting harder to sort of pick up. But they can tell within seconds if a politician's talking and if it's worth listening to, worth in their mind. And I've showed them various politicians on my phone. I go, what do you think of this? And they just switch off within 3 seconds. 3 seconds, I've got it. No, not interested. They're not. It's just not true. Not that it's not truthful, not that they're lying. It's just not interested in that. I want to see somebody. This sort of method here is where we need to engage with politicians.
I'll do a join another one with that one. The word freedoms, and then which is rights to own property, rights to the freedom to speech and freedom to associate, all those freedoms. And if you change the word right to privilege, a subtle difference, but how does moving away from just having a right to own a property or right to speech, or having a privilege to speak openly, or having a privilege to own a property, how does that subtle word difference, but doesn't look very, at a surface level, when you throw that message out, just put a footnote somewhere.
Yes.
And how does that little difference changes in action?
It's a really good point. So I'm going to give two examples. One's under the Firearms Act and one is under the Criminal Code. And I want to preface it before I get into those and say that it feels like it's always done with a message of safety. This safety overlay that we have over everything is people need to think about that. If you're watching this discussion I'm having with Dev out there, wherever you are, think about how many times safety is used as the reason for doing something that you are reluctant to go along with, or that your gut is telling you, I'm not quite sure about this. Because the safety message is what makes you back down from saying anything. And you need to start thinking about using your words and coming out and saying it. And that shifting of a right to a privilege, it's the bitter pill that people take. They go, yeah, well, I guess I can still do these things because I'm given the privilege to do it. The privilege. So I'll give a legislative example first. It's the Firearms Act. So I think it's Section 4 or 5 of the Firearms Act.
Can you put the complete name of the Firearms Act?
The Firearms Act 2024. So it's Western Australian legislation, and it's December 2024 is when it got passed from a bill, went from a bill to an act, and it's currently under review at the moment with the Parliamentary Review Committee, Legislation Review Committee. And the section I'm talking about is the objects of the Act. Now, objects within an Act are a number of descriptive points that articulate what that Act is trying to achieve. So it's objectives, but it says objects. So one of the objects, I think it's the first or the second one, it says that firearms ownership is a privilege and not a right, and that the need for public safety will override something about owning a gun. I can't remember the tail end of it. But the important words here are that it says firearms ownership is a privilege and not a right. And this is where we get into the weeds, and I try and harp on this with people, especially in politics. Forget about the word firearm if you could. Just imagine any other piece of property. Maybe a contentious piece of property. How about a diesel vehicle? Because that destroys the atmosphere apparently, and the whole world and the sky's falling in, and climate change. And I'm not poo-pooing the idea that the climate is changing, or in fact that we have an effect as human beings on the atmosphere. I'm just saying we need to be careful when we throw out the baby with the bathwater and just want to shut everything down because the climate's going to change. Let's just say it's a diesel vehicle. The ownership of a diesel vehicle is a privilege and not a right. Now that sounds absolutely ridiculous to the average person that just heard me say that. And the reason it sounds ridiculous is because it is. Well, what if you own the vehicle and you never turn it on? What if you only drive the vehicle at certain times? What if you get that vehicle tuned and you have certain restrictors and controls on it so that it doesn't emit the gases that are quite so bad? What if a whole bunch of factors? And you could just cross over all of those factors straight onto firearms, and the same argument can be made. But we accept it because it's firearms, and we've been browbeaten into being accepting since Port Arthur in 1996 in Australia, the Port Arthur massacre, guns equals bad. And we're getting this message across the board with many things. This object, this thing, this person equals bad. Charlie Kirk equals bad for some people. So we're being told that this thing is bad, so we need to restrict it. And we've turned it into a privilege now and not a right in some cases. And for firearms, that's what it is. Now let's just flip the words a bit. Instead of a firearms privilege is not a right, how about a firearms licence is a privilege and not a right? Now, that's a different thing altogether because the licence is issued by government. And that they could have said that. I would still object to it because I'm just sick of being told that everything's a privilege. I think government's there to serve the people, and I think if somebody wants a gun licence, the government should fall over themselves to issue it to them because they're an upstanding member of society. And that's just what I believe now, because most people out there are decent people and they're not going to go rampaging around simply because a gun got put into their hands. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of these people in Parliament think. They think that a normal person sitting there, all of a sudden you put a gun in their hands, now they're a murderer. That's actually the way they appear to think. So on that firearms licence versus ownership, I encourage people to think about it carefully. You know, that's a privilege is something that's given to you as a concession of the state. The state gives you this privilege to do this. Oh, it's a privilege to do this. Well, privileges can be removed very easily. A privilege can be removed if you don't do certain things in a certain way, or you do certain things in a certain way, whereas a right is innate. It's there. You have it. There's no arguing about it. It can be curtailed. They're totally different things. And do you want me to keep going on? Because I've got one more example.
Yeah, please do.
Criminal Code. The Criminal Code Act, Compilation Act 1913, I think is its full name. So it's Western Australian legislation. People think we have a right to self-defence in this country and in this state, and you do not. And I want to be quite clear that you have a defence to a charge of, insert charge here, assault occasioning bodily harm, wounding, grievous bodily harm, and even death. So if you reasonably suspect that you are being assaulted or you are being attacked and you fear one of those things occurring to you, you can use the force that is equal to or slightly above to try and overcome the force that's being used against you to prevent you from suffering that outcome. So, yes, you've got a defence. So if the police turn up after you've used the force, the thing is, you'll likely still be arrested and interviewed, possibly charged, possibly have to go to trial, rather than the police start from the position of self-defence. Well, this person has a right to self-defence. They've just said that they were defending themselves. Now, that's still messy. The police still need to be involved. They're still going to have to investigate. I don't argue any of that. But it's a position that we start from here. Does this person have a defence, or do they have a right? And that's the difference between privilege and right. I think one of the clearest cut cases, and there's a bit of social media movement around this, is castle law. There's a lot of people pushing for castle law so that and what they're getting at here is the right to self-defence in your own home is just a given, because someone that is in your home and they shouldn't be here, that's it. It should be taken as a given that you have the right to self-defence. You have a right to defend your house. And that's different than if you're walking down the street, because that's very complicated. Who was there first? Who attacked who first? Who's the aggressor? Who's the victim? You know, is there a victim? Are they two people just fighting? Is it disorderly conduct? You know, there's all those questions. So it's a nuanced discussion about rights versus privileges, but it's highlighted with the Firearms Act right now. And that's probably one of the clearest cut ones I can give. The other one is the Criminal Code one that I just gave as well.
Thank you.
I think there is a incongruity between the Criminal Code, the fact that we do not have the right to self-defence, and the fact that the Firearms Act says that you can't use a firearm for self-defence. So we are now if we did have castle law, you would now be precluded from using the only tool that is appropriate to defend your home. If you have a lady in a house on her own, and she's an average female stature, which is generally smaller and less strong as the average man stature, and you have two burglars come into the home, I'm sorry, there's no other weapon. That lady would have to be a martial arts champion or some sort of, she'd have to have the luck of a saint to overcome the force that's going to get used against her. So the firearm is the only tool to use. And it's a discussion that politicians are too scared to use, too scared to talk about. And it happened in Parliament last year. Self-defence was discussed in a setting of people in the bush having to defend themselves against wild dogs and other creatures that could kill them. And they just didn't want to go near it. So, yeah.
We are covering a fair ground in terms of the freedoms, rights, and privileges / the undercover word for not to give you the rights. For me, one of the things which are critical or important is freedom of speech.
Yep.
And I feel people, whatever their views are, people should be able to talk to each other and then talk across board. And I think that creates a functioning civil society when you have that core freedom or right to speak at forums, as individuals, in your own association or group settings. How do you see that trend being curtailed in many ways and form? And how does freedom of speech is taken away probably when you are a public servant?
As a public servant. Well, I'll get into that. I'll try and remember to come back to that. But it was remiss of me to miss speech when we started talking about rights and freedoms. I think it's probably the fundamental one, because without it, you can't think. And I think the best example of that is I don't know if she's a young lady anymore. She seems young. Her name is Yeonmi Park. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeonmi Park. She's a North Korean defector. So she escaped North Korea with her mother. If anybody wants to look at that, she's done many podcasts, but the one I listened to was with Joe Rogan, and that was a tearjerker. That was tough to listen to what she went through in Korea and then getting out of Korea. And that when she spoke about free speech in America or in any Western country, and the effect that the lack of free speech had on the way that she thought when she was in Korea, in North Korea, that really made me think about speech, because think about it, we're talking about a concept. Actually talking helps you think and conceptualize more, solidify or break down and change your views, because you're talking. If you control the way people speak, whether it's removing their right or surreptitiously changing the language by using certain methodologies, whether it's in social media, whether it's through government changes to government policies, you make certain forms of speech more acceptable or less acceptable than others. You actually affect the way people think. And I think that one example that they have in North Korea is there's no real word for I or me. It's us or we. And it's very collective. So the ability to think about yourself is removed to a certain extent. And that really made me think that particular podcast. So I think it's important. The speech is important because, as you said, it helps us relate to each other. And as a public servant, then, if we move on from there, as a public servant, absolutely, you're employed by the government to carry out a role. And when you say public servant, you're talking about someone in the executive. So, for example, the context was me as a police. That's the way I understood it. There's certain things I just couldn't say, even though I wanted to. I just met a police officer before this. We talked about something else, and he and I he was in the job longer than me, so he's been in probably 30-something years now. And we're just saying it's strange. I would have obeyed thousands of orders in my 27 years of police. Many of them I would have gone, I don't really like doing this, but it's like, okay. A couple of times I've bucked it and I've gone, look, this isn't right. Go to the supervisor. We have a bit of back and forwards, and then we go a different direction. But this one order that I didn't obey, and then you're out. Now, to a certain extent, they need to maintain some discipline. So, okay, There's certain things you can and you can't say or do. But there's got to be some form of balance in there. I believe that what happened to myself and all the other officers who got sacked as a result of disobeying the order to be vaccinated, I believe that was a step too far. The courts upheld it though. So at the moment that is legal and justified and it's right according to law. I still disagree with it. So I will continue talking about it because at the moment we still have freedom of speech and, you know, we have to be people in the executive government right now. I think they probably need to think very hard about what it is that they are going to stand up for and how they're going to provide a bulwark against tyranny because they're the ones that are going to be used for the impending tyranny. I feel that tyranny from government is coming. And it's not because there's any plan or any group or any bloody whatever it is, you know, there's not some evil person sitting there, we're going to tyrannise. No. We want more safety. We're told that we need more safety. We give more power to the government. They take more power. It's a vicious cycle. And at some point, we're going to have to interrupt the cycle as citizens. How we interrupt that cycle is, I was saying before about joining a political party, but that's fundamentally based in what you were just saying you thought was the most important freedom, which is speech. And if we don't have that freedom of speech, we can't do any of it. And I also feel it's a bit of a side note. It's not a freedom or an encroachment on our freedoms, but I said before, a surreptitious changing of the language I feel is happening. You can't say certain things in a certain way. You're cancelled if you say certain things in a certain way. And I'm with you. I believe that it's freedom of speech is paramount. I actually feel that certain forms of speech that some might reasonably say is not allowed, I believe it should be allowed. I would like to hear why a right-wing extremist thinks the way they think. I want to hear why a left-wing extremist wants to think the way they think. Because if we don't speak to each other, we don't see the humanity in the other person. And I feel that if I could say if there was one word that concerns me that encapsulates all my concerns about where we're going as a nation and where we're going in general with each other as a society and worldwide, I think the word is division. Because I believe that when people are divided, they can easily be conquered. And I feel that whatever we're doing, we're being divided. Gun owners, rest of the population, you know, people that had the jab, you know, so-called anti-vaxxers, you know, Australians, migrants, you know, black, white, yellow, white, whatever colours you want to put between people, we're always divided. And it's a really tough discernment to make because the reality is there are differences between people and groups of people. But people can be divided up any number of ways. So you and I, we're different because you're from India and I'm from Australia, but it's not that simple. I've also got Irish blood. Apparently I've got Jewish blood. I've got all these different things in my background. What I care about is that I'm Australian, you're Australian. What are we doing together? What are our common goals? And if we can speak to each other freely, we can start to identify those. But if we're told we can't speak to each other or we can't speak in a certain way, then that person's the enemy. Well, now we can't even see the humanity in the other person. And with the best wartime tactics were dehumanising tactics.
You were born here, you're citizen by birth, have naturalized through being here. And so when you take citizenship, you take an oath.
Yeah.
So I want to read the oath to you. Yeah, I want to read that to you. And then
read the one, because I think you get a choice here.
Yeah.
Read the one that you chose.
So it says, from this time forward, I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people. whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey.
Yes.
So that's part of the pledge you take or oath you take.
Yeah.
During your citizenship ceremony, or that's the whole process. And I think, as you clearly talked about, that division versus coming together is more important rather than, yes, people can have a different ethnic background, their own cultures, but as you commit, the difference between probably somebody who's ethnically Indian and versus somebody who's from Europe is you are allowed to have dual citizenship. Yeah. But if you're ethnic Indian, you're not allowed. So I'm only Australian. I'm not Australian and Indian. Whereas somebody who's Scottish or some parts of Europe or French, you can have a French passport and an Australian passport. Right. Whereas I can have only one passport, I have only one citizenship. I don't have two citizenship. So
is that a rule of India or Australia?
India. So you can't have dual citizenship.
Why? Do you know why?
They don't want to give dual citizenship. You have to choose your loyalties. So which means people who are ethnically Indians coming from India,
right, they
have made a conscious choice to be Australian. They have left something and they have accepted one. So I think that's a difference between somebody is in two boats. Right. Versus so I think that's a conscious very choice that, yes, I have a second or a third or multiple passports one can have if they choose to, whatever. But who are specifically from India, were born there, it's a choice they have made too. And then so I want you to talk a bit further on the same idea of division versus bringing together, because it's easy to divide, and it's hard work to bring people together. It's so easy. It's the lazy politics is to divide.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's difficult. Hard politics is to bring people together.
Yes, and people don't want to listen either. Like they don't want to listen. They want sound bites. The way that we're geared is like, I need the 8-second version.
Yeah,
it's not as simple as that. You could take. I'm sure there's probably 20 samples of my language today that you could take an 8-second example of and make me look like an idiot. And the opposite. Yeah. Like, you got to be careful about the 8-second soundbite.
Yeah. So, and then people who on both sides of the politics, when they get trained on running campaigns, so both the sides are trained on to have the messaging for somebody for year 5 or year 8. Not so. Yeah, because
that was my training.
But that's wrong, because that assumes no agency of a citizen. That assumes that citizen is not bothered about the long form argument, how challenging it might be. It assumes that the citizenry are there. So we will have a simplified message.
The plebs.
I don't want to assume their agency.
Yeah.
But my intention is that all citizens have agency, and let's have the long form argument. And then, as we talked about, the lazy politics is of division.
Yes.
And the hard work politics is for bringing people together.
Yeah. Yeah, you've hit on something that's quite core to our current political state, I believe, as in the state we're in, the situation we're in. So I think I mentioned it right at the beginning about that sort of idea that they've lost touch with the people. Well, they've lost touch with the people because they consider them, the plebs. They just need to be told. We just need to give them this messaging. And, as a person that's running as a candidate, you might get told, here's your top 4 points that you've got to talk about. Here they are, ... like cost of living, cost of housing, whatever else it is. Everyone's talking about it. What does that mean? Well, what do you mean? Yeah, okay, there's a housing crisis or there's a cost of living crisis. Yeah, and I think this is where my kids pick up on it, because they're not seeing a genuine conversation. Mm-hmm. And so they're going, well, I don't need to listen to you. I don't want to listen to you. My eldest, I pressed on her. Her first vote was when I ran as a candidate. And after she voted, I took her to politics.
Don't share who she voted, but yes.
No, I won't. Yeah. I won't. But we spoke about it afterwards, and I pressed on her. I said, I do not want you to vote for me because I'm your dad. And later on, she I mean, it's obvious that at that level, who she's but I really wanted her to make her own decision. And she told me who she voted for because I went for lower house state, obviously. So I was going as a local candidate for Central Wheat Belt for the Liberal Party. And we spoke about how she voted for the upper house. And then when she went to do a federal, she explained how she voted federally when we spoke about it. And her criteria was she literally went to their websites and to their social media forums. She spent the time. She spent quite a while doing it. She figured out what their policies were and read what they were about. Very briefly, just quick run over. But that's enough for young people these days to just... And I didn't tell her to do that. My youngest one, she's quite similar. She's just disconnected. If it's the bobbling head talking on mainstream media, people aren't interested. I think a lot of young adults, even up to sort of my age, middle-aged, what am I? 48, what's that? Middle-aged?
Yeah.
Is that old?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Same.
So I think a lot of them are disconnected because they're listening to Joe Rogan or they're listening to, what's the other side of Joe Rogan, whatever you listen to there. So people want to hear, they want to engage. They're listening to maybe interviews like this and they want to hear what people have to say about things because they're concerned and they're sick of the old form where you turn on the nightly news and you'd get an 8-second sound grab from some politician and that's all you had to make your decision about who you supported and who you didn't. And we can see that's not a model that's worked because life's getting harder for the average citizen, whether it's home ownership or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Things are getting harder. It's obviously not working. Something's not working. And what's interesting is we have this is another thing, I'm just going off on a side note. I've noticed people have a saviour complex. And I'm a little bit, I mean, as a former cop, I'm quite happy to step in and risk my life and do something to, make the situation better. And a lot of people say, oh, yeah, Frenchie, you're going to save us or you're going to make a difference and we're going to get you in there and we're going to do this. And like, pump the brakes. Nobody's coming to save you. And that's actually one thing that I need to get across to people is that we need to save ourselves. We've got to stop relying on government to fix all of our problems for us. Some problems are best suited to government, like perhaps military. Like maybe that's best left to government to deal with. But we've got to start to fix our own problems and then stop expecting the politicians to fix our problems. Because the one thing the poli's going to do, they're actually trying to listen to the public and they go, oh, you've got this problem with this. Oh, what law can I create to fix that? Now that in itself, that thought is, I think, wrong. But the way I'd like to go forward is, I think Kerry Packer would be very happy with this. I'd like to find out which law I can get rid of to fix a problem first, as my first thought. And if it's not, if you can't get rid of something, then you've got to create something.
Or you can aggregate, or you can, do you have current form of law, you can
100%.
add some sections into that.
Yeah, and maybe we need to start having sunset clauses in our legislation. So, okay, life changes. Let's recognise that life changes. We're going to bring in a new law, but the sunset clause on this is 50 years because it's a social issue, 10 years because it's a technology issue. Start actually, because what that does is it forces the parliament to then review that situation. However, without the right speech in Parliament and the right types of people in Parliament, that's why people need to get political. So what was the question that you...
You have answered in a way.
I have, yeah.
Your experience running for a campaign, you spent a good amount of time on the road. You met people of very diverse backgrounds across your area.
Yep.
It's a fair big, from a geography point of view, large piece of land you have to cover for your electorate.
Yeah.
How did you, as you were thinking of putting your nomination through for pre-selection, what's the mindset you were going with in terms of, what are the key things you would be standing for and what are the key values you wanted to run and what was the trigger inherently for you to run?
The trigger that started the political process was COVID, straight up. And it's not, see, this is where people get, and you're just talking about this division, anti-vaxxer. It's like, had every other vaccine. So there was a number of reasons, and let's not get into it because that would be a long form discussion. But I had 5 reasons for doing what I did, and it wasn't just about the medication. You know, so yes, COVID started the political interest. I was already politically concerned with the firearms. I knew the firearms thing was coming up. I could see the messaging that was happening because about the 2015, 2016 mark, social media was really ramping up and there was a lot of disturbing things going on, a lot of arguments and, you know, the left-right brain thing that humans have is very odd. So we've got this part of our brain wants to classify and group things. It boxes things in, and we need that because, and this is the way it's been explained to me by a psychiatrist or a psychologist. It was on another podcast. If I'm talking to you, it's very easy for me to get distracted by the lamp there because it's a light source. And if I get distracted by the lamp, I can't think about what I'm talking to you about. So I need to box that in and call it that there's you and that's everything else. So that just gets lumped into everything else right now because I'm talking to you. Our ability to do that, it's inherent and we need it. But unfortunately, it's being gamed. Your boxing, compartmentalising part of your brain is being gamed by politicians. You are being told that this group of people, let's draw a box around it, is that group. And they have these characteristics and you must not like them and you can't talk to them. Or if you do talk to them and they say these words, they're automatically disqualified from being heard. And humans actually will accept that if the right messaging and the right cues are hit for that person to take it on board. That worries me. So, I just wanted to touch on that because it's people's boxing of groups of people. Because I could be, okay, I'm white. What does that mean, really? I mean, I've got that much racial background. I don't actually know if I'm white. Okay, well, I worked up north with the Aboriginal people and I got such a good rapport with them that they gave me like an honorary skin. So I've got Burrungal skin, which is it's a Martu skin. There's 4 skin groups. I got one because they felt like I was most suited to that skin group. And that was a lovely day when they came down and said, look, we've decided that this is Officer Lance, he's gonna be Burrungal from now on. And my officer in charge was quite impressed as well, and because we had a good working relationship. So what does that mean? How far does that go to saying you are white? I mean, I can't say I'm Aboriginal, but I've got a good rapport with the Martu people. I'm a gunsmith. I'm a father. I'm a business owner. I live in Northern. I live in Western Australia. I live in Australia. Like, they're just a few. Like, how many ways do you want to cut me up and box me in? And I think people need to think about that boxing process. So I just wanted to touch on that compartmentalisation that people do, because you asked about my campaign. And just ask that question again with what...
So when you were starting the campaign on the trail and you just meeting people, different sets of group, what were the reasons and what are the values which you felt being heard, echoed back to you when you were talking to people? Or
echoed back to me.
Echoed back to you and your own values you ran for.
Yes, okay. So I'll get to the echoed back to me stuff that I heard from people, and then because that goes to the boxing. And the reasons that I ran. So COVID was the start, concerned about the firearms, and then watching social media and watching the lay of the land and watching how people were being divided. And I think we just need some people in politics and in Parliament that are prepared to have these hard discussions. And I'm not scared of talking about guns, yet it seems that many politicians are scared of speaking about guns. For me, it's a litmus. I mean, I know the subject, so it's easy for me to talk about. But pointy, prickly topics need to be spoken about, and they're not being. And they're dancing. Politicians are dancing around the edges. I think I wanted to set an example. I think more than anything, Central Wheatbelt was pretty much impossible to win unless you're a National. And the Nationals guy won it because that's their home seat. But I did it on principle. I did it on principle because I want to set an example and because I feel that it's a duty. I still have that feeling of a sense of duty to do those things. And being prepared to go into something and lose your position is something you've got to be prepared to do. You've got to be prepared to take a loss. Some battles need to be fought and lost in order to win the war. And I suppose the values that I went in, I agree with the belief statement and the objects of the Constitution of the Liberal Party, which I won't, because it's long and laborious, we won't get into that now. But I agree with those, that they're good beliefs. And the constitutional objects are sound. Everything's great. There's a couple in there that I'd like to flesh out with people because you can say, a Liberal believes in Australia, its people and its future. That's one of them. What does that mean? In what context? We're talking about immigration? We're talking about housing? And how? What does that mean? So there's got to be actually an underpinning. Is it a doctrine? I suppose it might be a doctrine, the way that you interpret values or the way that you go about looking at them. But I felt as if I was a good representation of those beliefs and of those constitutional objects, and that I wanted to go in there not being afraid to say things out loud. And I feel that we've got an overabundance of politicians that just won't talk about the prickly, pointy topics because they're too scared. I believe there's another overabundance of cowardice. If I got in and then lost it because I did something and I did it to the best of my ability and because I believed it was the right course of action and I lose the seat because of it, so be it. Fine. I'll go back to my life. Which, can I say, is something a bit edgy here?
Please do.
Many politicians don't have a life to go back to. So that's the quiet part out loud. There are many career politicians and I would like them to not be career politicians and maybe go have a life. Don't hang around the Canberra circle for too long. Having said that, I haven't lived in Canberra, so I can't really make a good judgment of it, can I? Checking my own thoughts there. Okay, so getting on to what I noticed echoed back at me. A lot of people knew who I was and they'd come to my public engagement for it. So it's a bit of an echo chamber. What I found interesting, though, was on the early polling and the polling booth and the discussions I had with people there that didn't agree with me. And they were all good discussions. The Labor candidate for Central Wheatbelt, I got along with her famously. It was great conversations. I mean, we didn't agree on the way to go about some things, but we both respected each other and we had a good rapport. I believe that she wants to do good for her community. I'm concerned, though, that many politicians, and look, the public doesn't need to know exactly what the Liberal belief statement says. They don't have to recall it from memory. I mean, I can only recall parts from memory. But it's incumbent on a sitting member of Parliament to know those and to know what their party's about and be able to act on them and use those principles and beliefs to guide their decision-making or at least create a link between the decision that they've made and one of those fundamental values so that people can see that there's something congruent here. And I think and it doesn't matter which party, there's a lot of people in the public are looking in on politicians going, you're just making decisions on the fly. You're just seat of your pants. And then the questions come in, well, are you being paid to do that? Is a lobbyist giving you $500,000 to say that? Is all these questions, and they may or may not be true. Maybe that politician just got no idea what the general public wants, but it's got some staff member in their ear saying, well, you need to do this. Maybe that staff member's a woke ideologist. Maybe they're, the opposite. I don't know. But, what I heard from people that were coming through and obviously voting Labor when I was doing my campaign was really interesting. A lot of people I didn't expect. A lot of people that obviously wouldn't agree with me on the firearms thing. But the ones that I did manage to speak to had never really thought about the firearms issue. Spoke to one of them. She was a volunteer for Labor on the booth. And we talked about abortion, another prickly topic. And she was completely unaware that full-term abortions were occurring in Australia now. And I didn't take a particular strong point whether if it's this, if it's that, it's that. I just asked her a question and I said, you're aware that, that doesn't happen in Australia? I said, actually it has. There was 12 done recently. I gave her a time period. I had some stats on me at the time. I don't think full-term abortions is good. That seems gruesome to me. I think the average person would think that's gruesome. And it was quite obvious. Well, this lady was full-on pro women's rights, female reproductive rights. Or what do they say? My body, my choice. She was full-on pro. And when I said full-term abortion, and then I described what a full-term abortion is, which I won't do here because it's gruesome, she basically went white, and she agreed that was bad. So it's okay, well, that's your belief system. Whatever formulation you have in your mind about what an abortion is, obviously you've boxed it into a little idea, just like we were talking about boxes before. So what are you boxing in here? Should we not have a discussion about this? And then we actually had great discussions on other things, and it's interesting. We opened the lines of communication.
And on the campaign trail, what are the 2 things or 3 things you learned about yourself? Because you are doing things very different, which you would never did before. Typically, when you are on a campaign trail, you're doing things which probably, if you've not done campaigns politically before, and you are fresh as they come. Yes. And what did you learn? What things did you learn about yourself?
I'll give you a funny response to that.
Yeah.
I learned that I have Jewish blood. Because, so the first, for people that don't know the history, and there's no reason you would. I got a small spot in the West Australia. I followed somebody on X, I think it was X. Yeah, I think it was X, who self-describes as a raging anti-Semite, apparently. Now, I went to check this on his pages. And I couldn't find that claim, but maybe it was in a video that he did or whatever. I don't know how many people I follow on different platforms, and I don't really, stuff comes up on my feed. I think what's likely is this particular guy is an Irishman, and he was covering the riots that were happening there. And I think I vaguely remember there was a police car that was on fire in a riot. If somebody on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it comes out with a quippy remark that sounds well-informed, maybe a bit funny, maybe a bit edgy, I go, I like the cut of his jib, follow. That's the depth of it. And I explained this to certain people within the party, and then I was not endorsed the first time round. And the way that occurred, I won't get into it here, but it made the newspaper. I'm totally undisturbed by it. I mean, it's a little bit of, you go, oh, geez, that's a bit rough. Okay. So I just applied again immediately. Because I recognised what happened is you just had some people in the party that were captured by this possibility that this candidate is anti-Semitic, which, if you know...
But you have Jewish blood.
Yes, but I only found out during I had been told, I think, when I was younger, but it's just, to me, it's like, whatever, I'm Australian. It's like... Anyway, my mum reminded me, when I was talking to my mum, she saw it in the West Australian. She was quite worried. She freaks out with mainstream media. And she was quite worried. She goes, "Oh, you know your grandmother on the such and such side." She was explaining who was Jewish. And I went, "Okay, cool. Okay." I ran again and I got through. And the whole anti-Semitism thing kept coming up because the Premier at the time, it was Cook, wasn't it? Yeah. He kept raging on about anti-Semites and, you know, the Labor Liberal Party is recruiting anti-Semites, homophobes, and something other else. Now, I had a certain reporter contact me and say, "Look, the Premier in the press briefings before the cameras roll has been referring to you, and he called you recently a danger to society or a threat to society." Which is why the reporter contacted me. He says, "Well, 27 years as a cop, a danger to society." He's like, those two things aren't lining up. And this is a mainstream media reporter. So we had a half-hour discussion on the phone, and yeah, it was a good conversation. And it's interesting. So he's created this box for me, threat to society. And what he might be talking about is the fact that I disobeyed the Commissioner's order to be vaccinated. That's probably what he's thinking. I'm guessing. You know, I had lawyers contact me saying you should sue him, you should do that because he doesn't have parliamentary privilege when he's talking in public and this and that and the other. I'm just not interested in any of it. But I remember a reporter coming and speaking to me and saying, you know, what would you say or whatever? And he was referring to the Jewish thing. And I said, "Look, I'm Australian. I care about Australia." And I suppose what I learned from that, I mean, apart from my minimising that down into I've got Jewish blood, that's what I learned. I suppose I learned that I had not lost the substance of what made me fight the Commissioner in court. Made me join up with Ben Falconer, made me go to the lawyers and made me face the music and get stood down, knowingly get stood down, knowing that we'd possibly likely lose, and do it again. And then I recognised that, and I remember saying to the reporter, I think this bit made the news. I said, "I'll do it again and I'll keep doing it." And I realised that I will actually keep going in one way or another. I don't know what the future holds, but I must keep going, because if I just worry about what iPad I'm going to buy next, what's the point of that? I mean, yeah, I could live. I could turn an income over. But how's my kids going to live? Like, they can't afford a house. They're living at home with not many prospects of moving out of home. I mean, you've got to have double income and no kids to have a reasonable house now, and you've got to have good double income, over 100. Not many young people can just get a job for over 100 grand. So I learned that. I'm trying to think as well what else I learned about me. Well, you and I had contact. You tell me. What do you think? We occasionally caught up.
I think I've observed you before and after. My observation is probably you are, as you rightly pointed out, that your strength of the argument is on the side of politics you are. They are more clear, and they're more formed. The arguments are more formed, and the reasons of doing what you're doing are more formed.
Okay.
That's my observation. But my concluding question to you, because it's somebody listening might say that they're very pessimistic about politics and the future of the country.
Me?
No, they, as in we both. The way, as somebody's watching us, they say, hey, they are only talking negative things. Talk something positive, and what are the aspirations? If you have to paint a picture of thriving Australia,
yes.
If you have to paint a picture of still being a leader in the global conversations,
yes,
continuing that leadership and be part of not just the global and the look for thriving, sustainable, and healthy in some way or form.
Yeah.
What picture do you see in the future?
Well, I suppose to explain myself so that I don't seem too pessimistic, I suppose the reason I come across as pessimistic is because I see those potentials that you just spoke about. I see the potential for Australia. Look at the resources that we have. Look at we do have declining skills in manufacturing and things like that, but we've got so many possibilities and we've got a fantastic country. Obviously, I'm Australian. I think it's the best country, but I mean, I have visited other countries.
I've travelled, I can tell. I've travelled, I can tell.
So you can tell.
I can tell.
It's certainly one of the best, I think. And it's certainly got potential. The thing is, it's got the structure in place for people to utilise in order to make it better. It's just, it feels like there's a little bit of hesitancy or almost laziness. It's not laziness. It's just people are uninformed about their role and their duties. And I believe every citizen has a duty to be a part of positive change. And I believe it's a political that you can get there. I suppose, I mean, so that's why how I'd explain why I seem pessimistic, because I can see the potential, but there's this massive disparity between what is and what we could be. There's just a huge divide there. So on that, what are our potentials? Well, look at our resource. We have almost every mineral in this country. Whether we choose to mine it and just ship it off, or whether we choose to develop it and process it, refine it and turn it into a product, that's up to us. We could, look, Australia's a country of migrants. I mean, my Irish ancestors came here, so that's what, that's great. So it's 5 generations back. They came here, and they're migrants. So we're all migrants unless you're Aboriginal, Indigenous Aboriginal. And, you know, we could bring in any person from any area and have them augment our society. That then immediately makes me think about how we're being divided and how they've changed the type of person that's coming into the country. And I'm not talking about race here, although it may come down to race, but it's the skills. It's like what skills and what profile of person you bring in. And if they're swearing that oath that you just swore, well, okay, if that happened and if that person did those things, then we'd all be on the same track. But unfortunately, what we've got is we've got a lot of leaders, a lot of our so-called leaders are creating wedges between these different groups so that we don't even know what our common rights are, what our common goals are, we're always questioning where we're at. So that's what causes me concern there. So we've got this potential for this fantastic democratic system where we can all have a say, but it requires us all to have a say. And you could do that in any number of ways. And my hope for the future is that, and I think this is actually happening slowly. During COVID, there was a minority of people, but there was a lot of people in numbers, but still a minority of the population were vocal and they were stepping up and they were getting involved. And then the firearms thing happened. There's another small group. Now this March for Australia thing happened. And I'll go to the next one because I don't have a problem with migrants. It's great. It adds richness to our culture and it actually helps us form that one culture. We've got the possibility and we're moving that way so that if enough people wake up and realise that they actually do have the power and the ability to create change, they'll be able to do it if they get involved. So, and I'll leave you on this last point. I was at the last March for Australia rally and I had a guy there and we were talking we were walking up St George's Terrace and I said, look at all the people, there's got to be 10, 20,000 people here. Imagine if every single person in this crowd, every person that's come here, they've gotten dressed in some Australia thing or they brought a flag with them, they got in the car, they came here, they find a parking spot, they're informed in some way, they're watching social media, they're probably not watching mainstream media. And imagine if every single person here joined a political party And I want to be quite clear. Look, I'm in the Liberal Party because I believe those values are good. I think they've got a good structure. I think it's a good way forward. But I don't care what party people join. I really don't. I just want them to make a difference. And if they're in a different party to me and we've got similar beliefs and values and goals, then let's do it. That's what's needed. And I said that to this guy. I said, imagine if every person here joined a political party. He goes, oh, that's a really good point. I was thinking of joining... He was thinking of joining the Nationals. He lived in a country area. I said, do that. You know, fine. I mean, I don't want to join the Nationals, but go for it if that's what's going to float your boat and make a difference. I said, but could you do this for me? Don't just join. Join and start making noise. And I think that's probably the message that I'd have for people is do something and try and make that change. Humans have forever been changing our environment to suit us since way back. Mm-hmm. Look as far back as you want. We change our environment, or we try to. So try and do that now before your ability to do it is gone, because I do believe we're getting to a point where it's going to get harder and harder to make a difference. Now, you could join a political party. You might, like what you're doing, that's making a difference. So media has a role in it. Social media has a role in it. Groups and organisations have a role in it. But just do something. Don't just think about what iPad you're going to buy next.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dev. It's good. It's good fun.